what we are seeing, unfortunately, is that people are having to lay off their staff, and they're laying them off en masse.
Welcome to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast, and today we've got a special episode which is in response to the impact that the coronavirus is having on many of our customers. What we wanted to do is to be able to help them through a very difficult process in terms of shaping some of the important decisions that they need to be thinking about as it relates to their membership base. We've managed to get a gentleman called Mr. Al Noshirvani, who is the founder and chairman of Motionsoft. He works with a lot of the leading operators across North America and other parts of the world, and he's been talking to many of them about what they're doing, the decisions that they're making, and how to manage an extremely difficult situation. I think there's some fantastic information in here for anybody that's in the health and fitness industry, responsible for making decisions about what to do for their business over the next few months. I hope this episode has been useful. If you've got any information, any questions, any advice about how we could be helping anybody in the industry by providing information, then please let us know. You can contact me, Matthew Januzek, through LinkedIn or any social media platform. Please take a listen, and I appreciate Al for taking up his Sunday and doing this interview with us. So hope you enjoy the episode, and thanks for listening. Welcome to this week's podcast. It's an unscheduled one based on the things that are happening in the world today. And I've been I sort of really appreciate Al Noshirvani, who's the founder and chairman of Motionsoft, to be able to join with us on this Sunday morning. So Al, I appreciate you sort of giving up part of your weekend to join us today.
Thanks, Matt.
Al, just to give people a little bit of background, can you just give us a bit of information on yourself and what your company does in terms of the health and fitness industry?
Sure. So I am, as you mentioned, the founder and chairman of Motionsoft. I founded the company in 2004. Motionsoft is a software, membership management software and billing company in the health and fitness industry. We work with some of the best brands in the health and fitness industry, including Equinox, Crunch Fitness, Town Sports International, about 1,000 other gyms that operate primarily in North America, and obviously with some of them have come into the UK market as well. I also happen to be a gym owner. I've got 3 health and fitness clubs here in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. They're in the HVLP space.
Right. Okay. So I first came into contact with you via Paul Bedford, and I was listening to the town hall meeting that you did with Club Industry, which was pretty fascinating. And it certainly seems that things are changing at a rapid pace. You know, we were making communications and plans not more than a week ago, where we were just thinking about maybe, not attending a few of the fitness industry events. And then, within a few days seems to be the whole industry is closed down. So, as of today, what is your view on what's the current state of the market as you're seeing it with a lot of your current business and the people that you support?
Yeah, the majority of our customers, no matter their size, whether they're the large enterprises or the single site operators at this point, have shut down. And I think to your point, going into this about 10, maybe 15 days ago, the general consensus, and in fact, what we were hearing from government, at least here in the US, was that this was a pause of about 2 weeks, and that by April 1, things would be back to normal. I think people are now realizing that that's not going to be the case, and they are needing to adjust their plans and plan for 60, perhaps 90-day closures. Many of the operators here in the U.S. Had not thought about that when they initially came up with their billing schemes to handle membership, and now they're forced to rethink a lot of those decisions.
Right. So yeah, that's certainly, I'm a member of a gym, and that's the date over here. I think certainly in the US, compared to some of the European people we deal with, that some of these shutdowns were happened sooner. I know on Friday in the UK they had a communication where all of the UK gyms needed to close, and I think that's when this is being communicated, it's very much open-ended. It's like, well, maybe it's 2 weeks or maybe it's longer. So is that what you're seeing then at the moment now? People, the conversations of people need to get their heads around this being a lot longer than just a couple of weeks then? Is that sort of pretty accurate, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think most people have now come to terms with the fact that April is a wash, and they're starting to think about May and beyond. Um, I had heard that some of the Asian clubs were down for about 60 days, and they're just coming back up. And even in those scenarios, they're not coming back up fully. They are operating for a few hours, shutting down and cleaning, opening back up again. So even when we do come back, I think it will be under a completely different set of rules and standards.
Yeah, yeah, I certainly see just in terms of the people's behaviour changes. I know you're allowed to go out and sort of go out into some green area and go to the supermarket for essential goods, but just the way people are even around each other seems to be very, very different. When you're outside, and so I can't imagine when in the fitness environment where people are generally packed together quite closely, breathing and that. I'm sure that the behaviours in that are probably going to be different when they come back.
For sure, for sure. We have one club that still remains open in the state of Virginia that has not mandated the closure of non-essential businesses, and we're essentially allowing 10 people at a time to walk into a 30,000 square foot facility.
Wow. So in the United States, then, is there still some states that are managing to stay open at the moment?
They are, but I think it's just a matter of time before they close. What has been really interesting, and I think there's probably a lot of pessimism, but what I would tell you is that the number of inbound, in this particular case, in the club that we have open, the number of inbound communications from members thanking us for leaving a sense of normalcy in their lives has been remarkable. A lot of inbound activity on social media, etc. Unfortunately, with that, you also have the occasional person who says you really should shut down. We're obviously being very diligent and trying to manage things carefully.
Yeah, I think that's one of the difficult things is people now seem to be very polarized in terms of their views on this situation. And there's a lot of I was just reading something this morning, and you kind of have this, real news, fake news. Do we believe in what the government's saying? Do we, is some of it scare tactics? It's really difficult, I suppose, as individuals and business owners to really know what to believe, and what to do right for your customers, and also when a lot of these small businesses, I guess, are they could potentially never open again if this continues for that amount of time. Yeah. Let's talk about some of the practical things then that assuming then that this is between sort of 6 to 8 weeks, maybe longer, based on what you're seeing and your experience, what are some of the practical things that people should be thinking about straight away that would certainly help them either ride this out or prepare them for when things do open again?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people are making an immediate reaction based on what they think is best for their business or what is ethically or morally right, with regard to membership billing, which for many people happens either daily or for the bulk of the industry happens on the first of the month. So April 1st is 9 days away, and a lot of gyms are going to be billing their members. I think that I'm finding organizations are falling into two different schools, those that will bill and those that are not going to bill. And I want to talk about each of those slightly for a moment. So in terms of those that are going to bill, I would say the majority of those are going to be extending credits either equal or greater than the amount that they will collect from their members over some period of time or as a lump sum once they open. So for example, if you're a gym that's charging $100 a month, and you do bill on April 1st, but remain closed throughout that month, you will then turn around and perhaps apply a $100 credit on your member's account that can be used for other purposes once you do open. Alternatively, you could ask your software vendor, and by the way, I think it's really important that people speak to their technology partners to ensure that what they are coming up with, these schemes that they're coming up with, can be supported from a technology perspective. So I'll come back to that later. But in essence, that $100 could also potentially be applied as a credit against the monthly dues over a certain period of time to help to conserve cash flow once you do open back up. So that's one set of people. The other set of people basically said, hey, we're going to be closed, and so we're not going to bill you. And I think that therein lies the danger, because if this thing goes on for months, you then need to make sure that you have a solid balance sheet to be able to support you throughout this process. In either scenario, I think it's incumbent on gym operators to call their vendors, whether it's their landlords, their utility providers, their software providers, whoever it is, and see how those companies can help us get through this. There is legislation that's being sponsored by or that's being backed by IRSA. It's running its way through the U.S. Congress now around the Families First Act that is intended to address things like unemployment benefits, mortgage deferrals by landlords, which in turn would allow us not to pay rents for some periods of time. So there is a lot of things happening, and it's a little bit of information overload right at the moment. But I would suggest that the most important thing to do, and we can talk about some of the details, Matt, but one of the most important things to do is you come up with the plans, think about how you're going to come out of this. Think about all of the different variables that are going to be impacted once you reopen. It's not just about April billing anymore. There are lots of other things that you have to consider.
Mm. And what do you think some of the I guess we can call them maybe errors in decision making, maybe where people are panicking. It's like, okay, look, I'm going to quickly do this. I heard you talk earlier about one of the things that is important is if you are going to continue billing on any level, consider the impact on the decisions that you're making then about the staff that you're also hiring. Could you just talk
Sure.
about that as an example, and if there are any more things that you're kind of seeing people moving down that may impact them further down the line?
Sure. So let's focus on sort of three different constituencies. Your members, we've talked about sort of operations, so we'll set aside operations for a moment, but your members and your staff. So social media is our friend usually when we are out selling and promoting our businesses. And sometimes, of course, we end up with reputation management issues that we have to address. There is no time like the present to get in front of that. The absolute worst scenario that could play itself out is one where you do continue to bill your members, but lay off all your staff. And you end up in a situation where members are complaining about the fact that they're being billed for a service that is not being provided, and staff, conversely, go on social media or speak amongst themselves and talk about the fact that my club company is still billing their members, but they're not paying me. And that creates a pretty significant challenge that you need to manage. And unfortunately, it's going to be something that you have to manage out in the public because of social media. And so I think that's one of those variables that you really need to consider. The other thing is there's lots of operational issues that we were dealing with on a day-to-day basis with our members already. So, for example, if we're planning on closing our operations for some number of months, you may have had members who, or you may take all of the members that you have and apply a freeze on their billing. That works fine. But you may have had members who are already on freeze. You may have had members with pending start dates in the future. Make sure you think about those things, because what you don't want happening is a person who was supposed to start on April 15th because they were moving into an area to suddenly start getting billed. So don't forget about all of those variables. So your staff and your leadership team, in my view, really need to sit around the table and have a very, call it a spitballing conversation about all of the different variables that need to be addressed. The third constituent, unfortunately, is the credit card companies. In this day and age, people receive alerts on their mobile devices as soon as a transaction hits their card. And what was once a very difficult thing to do, which was to stop a recurring transaction, has now become a much easier thing to do. And with a simple click of the button, a member can initiate a chargeback with their bank, and that money will immediately come out of your bank account per your credit card processing rules. And so be prepared for that, because there's going to be a lot of that. And um, most software companies and credit card processors have direct access into your operating accounts in order to recover chargebacks. It is then incumbent on you to fight that chargeback and explain to the processor why you are in your right to keep that money. And until
Mm.
such time that they are convinced of that, they're going to hold that money. And I'll tell you, it's going to be tough to win a chargeback when someone says that they're paying for something that they're not receiving. And
Mm.
so that has an impact. And there are other downstream impacts to that, including the ability by the credit card companies to apply what are called reserves against your operating accounts, where they can come and take significant dollars in order to protect themselves against downside.
Right. And that's, I guess, just the administration alone in managing something like that is probably pretty significant, my guess, because you're talking of thousands of these potentially.
Yeah, yeah.
So in that scenario, like that I agree. Nowadays most people, certainly myself included, have got an app, and with the click of a button, you can you can do those things pretty quickly. So what should people be doing in advance just to mitigate that? Because I guess, looking at your P&L, you're probably assuming that you've got a certain amount historically in place, and then I guess you're going to be working out, okay, well, what does that mean to my business in the next sort of 4, 8, 12 weeks? How do you factor that in then? Is there, because I suppose, people could also use that as an opportunity to get out of something that they suddenly realize, damn, I'm paying for this membership that I've not really been using. And, you may be getting the pendulum swing in the other direction on top of that. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think that at a high level, and I have my own opinions on the argument of the sleeping dogs that we'll save for another podcast in the future. But at a high level, I think that it is imminently important today more than ever for you to be in constant communication with your members about what you're doing, and give them enough time to react. So I'll give you my own personal, what we've decided to do at our clubs, which we'll be communicating out to the members as early as tomorrow. Essentially, what we've said is that we're going to be billing our members 50% of their dues. And we're an HVLP club. We have members that are paying $15 a month for membership. When we come out of this, however, we will apply back to them a full month of dues. So you can get 100% back. You 50% now, you'll receive 100% back, but you'll receive that 100% over a period of 12 months. So in the HVLP, and the way that we've sort of thought about this is that in the HVLP business, without contracts, which is what our clubs are, you end up in a scenario where people average member life is around 9 months. And so if you can keep someone for 12 months, giving away $15 or $30 potentially is probably not a bad investment. Now, if this goes on much longer beyond that, then we're going to have a serious issue. And that becomes one of cash flow.
And so based on what you've said, then, really the goal is to kind of ensure that you've got that loyalty with your members, that they're supporting you through this time. In your business situation, have you, as a business owner, is this going to be something new that suddenly they're going to be hearing from you, and it's like, oh, you've not heard from us for a while, but this is what we're going to do? Or is that really only something for companies that have been pretty good at having that communication up till now, where this is not, it's not going to be unusual, it will be a continuation of the typical conversation that's been going on for a while?
Yeah, so that's a very good point. I mean, we tend to over-communicate to our members, whether it's with weekly newsletters or with text messaging or through social media. We're constantly on their radar because we feel we need to engage them as often as we can. I do think that organizations that are in different price points, for example, organizations that are in the luxury segment, particularly given what's happening in the markets, and who have not been communicating with their members on a regular basis, I do think that those types of organizations need to really think about the proper way to handle this. perhaps using some influencer marketing, so the message doesn't come directly from them, but from potentially other members, may be a better way to go. I
Mm.
can tell you that, as evidenced by some of the communication we've received from our existing members who are continuing to come into my one club, people want these gyms to open back up. Um, it's going to be a ramp up once we do open, because you've obviously got to recover and sell to all the people that have been closed, and there's going to be some trepidation on their part. But I think that if you communicate to the members and you sell your case to them, I'm not laying off my staff. I'm going to continue to pay my rents. I'm going to open up as soon as I can. I'm continuing to clean and be diligent. I'm repainting the gym so that I can welcome you to a new facility when you come back. Those types of things are really important. And hopefully, you think that. I've heard a lot of people in the last 10 days, say we're all in this together. And I think that's the message that you have to sell to the members right now.
Yeah, I'm a member of Equinox, and I know they're one of your clients. And I think one of the things that they've done quite well is the communication, the ongoing emails that are, they're certainly not sales emails, but they're, look, here's some things that you could be doing, here's some things that you could be thinking of, and I guess that even I think they've gone down the freeze route. I suppose it kind of gives you the opportunity to just feel some sort of allegiance to a brand. Yeah. In terms of, I suppose, you've got the big groups that have probably got great teams behind them and able to probably manage as well. But in terms of some of the smaller facilities, we've got a very small facility, and some of the stuff that you're talking about here is, certainly would be beyond the scope of a lot of people that we've got managing it, because they're quite complex issues. What with yourself, specifically to your company, and I guess if you kind of, from what you know about your competitors, give me your comments on that. But are you guys sort of here to assist people in these strategies? Because a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, I guess, is things that most people may not even be thinking about. What's your relationship, and are other people in your position sort of being able to sort of help with these strategies in terms of what's best to do?
Yeah, I think everybody at this point is really focused on their customers and doing everything they can, my competitors included, to create as soft a landing as possible. We're being very we're over communicating with our gym customers at Motionsoft, letting them know what the options are, what the limitations are, because there are also limitations in supporting different ideas that they come up with. We sent out an email. Our customer success team sent out an email recently, and the result of that was a lot of customers who were trying to do these types of things manually, freezing every single one of their members one by one. Definitely reach out to your club software management company and your billing company, because they do have the ability to automate and script a lot of these things inside of your database. But also be flexible, because there are limitations to how you do things. And again, keep in mind that when we come out of this, we need to be able to support the re-ramping of the billing process. And that in itself is going to require work by the operations team and the technology team that's supporting you behind the scenes.
And I guess I suppose as well as doing, making these changes, working with vendors like yourself, there's also plugging that together with your marketing or communications people to kind of make sure that that message is getting through in the right way. And I suppose so. So it does make sense. Are you finding that things like email is the best way to do that, or are you seeing people, putting up videos and things like that on social media? Because there's quite a lot to it. It's not just a case of, look, we're going to freeze your membership and that's it. Have you seen any examples of things that are working well?
Yeah, we've seen, I think it's all of the above. We've seen social media posts, we've seen, and I think Equinox has done a pretty good job at this, by the way, so they could serve as an example of the type of things that a large organization is implementing. But we've seen social media posts, we've seen emails, we've seen text messaging. We've had signs on the front doors of the clubs with directions on what people should do. All of those things, I think, right now are appropriate. and things you should be thinking about. I also think that there are a subset of organizations that are now coming to terms with the fact that this is going to be a longer shutdown, and are coming up with schemes on how to continue to engage members, because there's only so many times you can tell them that you're going to build them or not build them. At some point, these people are going to expect something for the money that they may be paying you. And so there are a number of organizations now that are providing online exercise, one-on-one personal training using technology like you and I are using right now. Those types of things operators should also be thinking about. It's really interesting that when we put up, or a club puts up, and I'll use my own clubs as an example, when we put up a pre-recorded at-home workout using a chair with a group exercise teacher who our members are familiar with and who they know, then the amount of inbound goodwill that we get from that has been remarkable. And those are some of the great things that are coming out of this, because we really prove the fact that we are integral parts of the communities that we're a part of. And that's helped to buoy our instructors. Our members are speaking to each other. But again, it starts with the fact that we are over communicating to them by any means necessary.
So in your experience, I suppose, with your gym owner's hat on, is the goal really to avoid people cancelling en masse by providing some kind of added value through this period to get the support?
Yeah, that's exactly it. We have reached out to organizations like Calm, for example. It's an app that for mindfulness. My sense is that at this time, if I'm going to be billing my members and I'm asking my landlords not to charge me, there's something that I can do for them. And so we've reached out to app companies like Calm, like MyFitnessPal, et cetera, and continue to be the voice of wellness in people's lives, even when our doors are shut.
And what about if this does go on longer than the 6 to 8 weeks? Is there things that can be done, I suppose, virtually, in terms of being able to generate revenue? My guess, I've seen just last week, Gymshark are now offering to pay trainers their hourly rate to get them to create programs. Is there any interesting ideas on that front you've seen?
Yeah, so a couple of the operators who I've spoken to, as soon as the weather warms up here, are going to start offering some outdoor classes. Now, as we talked about early on, the situation is quite fluid, so even that may come to an end, especially when you see, tens of thousands of people on the beaches of Florida, and everyone's sort of scratching their head as to why they're there. But I think outdoor classes for those facilities even that can support it are one of those areas that we'll certainly explore.
Just coming back then to the to how people are charging. What about personal training? Because I know there's various different programs that people have in terms of billing for personal training packages. How are you seeing people dealing with that?
So in my case, and I'll talk about some others, in my case, we're going to continue to bill for personal training on personal training contracts. But what we are going to do, and this is one of those areas that I would encourage everyone to think about, what we are going to do is we're going to extend the expiry of personal trainers for personal training sessions for 1 year. So typically, when you do EFT-based personal training or recurring personal training, where you may have 2, 3, 4 sessions a month that are automatically charged to your account, those sessions will expire in about 60 days. Otherwise, they'll sit on your balance sheet forever as a liability. What we've done in this particular case, and this is one of those policies that we may change if this goes much longer than the 60-day that we're anticipating right now. One of the things that we're doing is we're taking those sessions, we're charging them, we're leaving them in the person's bank, if you will, and then we are extending the expiration of those for 1 year from the date that the transaction is charged. And I really would encourage people to look at that, because now the other side of the coin is you have people who buy personal training packages in bulk. So you might buy a 5-pack or a 10-pack. Tends to be the case more in the higher end clubs. And so I have 10 sessions sitting in my bank. I have to think about those sessions, because what if they're expiring in the month of April and I'm shut down? that's going to create a pretty significant member satisfaction issue once I reopen. And so I want to proactively communicate. The communication that we talked about earlier isn't limited to just billing. People want to know what's going to happen to my personal training sessions, what's going to happen to my guest passes, my prepaid group exercise sessions. Communicate about all of those types of things, and then make the right decisions, of course, based on what you expect your members are going to be happy with and what's right for your business.
We've not talked about staff, and I guess when things do change, we're obviously, I guess if you look at what's happening in the home fitness world, everybody's realizing they still need to go fitness. They're spending a fortune on a lot of online fitness providers, but when they come back, I guess my guess is they're probably going to come back en masse. What are you seeing people doing from the staff perspective? Because it's I've heard groups laying off thousands of people. I'm sure they can't keep these people on their books indefinitely. I suppose two questions. The first one is, what are you seeing people? Are they laying off their staff? And then secondly, how do you think people are going to ramp back up again after this is over?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we are seeing, unfortunately, is that people are having to lay off their staff, and they're laying them off en masse. The good news is that there is an avenue by which these individuals continue to get paid through unemployment, and as well as and additionally the legislation that's going through Congress right now. I think the limit is up to $511 per day, which is roughly equal to $130,000 a year salary. So if all of this legislation goes through, people should be able to be made whole from a day-to-day perspective. Nonetheless, they have been laid off. What I am seeing among many of the larger operators is the distinction and the messaging around the layoffs. Some people are calling them furloughs. Some people are calling them layoffs. Obviously, the difference there is that in a furlough, you still have your job. You're not getting terminated, but we're not going to pay you right now. In a layoff, you're actually getting terminated. You're no longer going to be paid. You're no longer going to accrue, etc. So those are the two avenues. The third one that I'm seeing, so layoffs, furloughs. The third one in which I'm seeing, which is I think creative and not necessarily appropriate for all organizations, but if you are an organization that is accruing paid time off, vacation, or sick, one of the approaches is to, and this is a win-win, is to allow the employee to use what has accrued on the balance sheet as a method of payment now. Because the reality is, if you have an employee that has 80 hours of PTO that's accrued on your balance sheet and they quit tomorrow, you'd have to pay them that 80 hours. And so what organizations are doing is they are reducing the liability on their balance sheets. They are paying the employees for that period of time and hoping that by the time the accrual is gone, the club's open back up.
Right. It's a difficult difficult sort of call to make, because I guess at the moment nobody's got a clue on how long this is going to go on. Yeah. And then do you see that there being challenges really with I suppose gearing back up at the end of this?
Yeah, I think there are going to be challenges. I also think that membership is not going to come back as quickly as if this had been a 2-week thing. The reality is, I think this has scared a lot of consumers and it will change consumer behavior. And they're going to expect us to show them that they can trust us in providing a clean environment that they feel comfortable bringing their kids to. A lot of these gyms, mine included, have kids clubs. And so you're bringing your child and putting them into the hand of somebody. Those rules are going to change for us going forward. And I think, quite frankly, this is going to have legislative impact even beyond the emotional, mental impact that it has on consumers.
And with staff being one of the bigger costs outside of your landlord, are there, to make those big decisions, what's anything that you've seen to guide people's decision-making process? Is it just do it quick and don't mess around because of the financial impact to cash flow, or what? Any thoughts that you've got on doing that?
The larger organizations I've spoken to who have made a decision have done it very, very quickly. Some of the smaller ones who tend to have much closer relationships with their staff have really struggled with this decision. I think at the end of the day, conventional business tells you make this decision quickly, do it once or as few times as you need to do it, and then live with your decision.
Mm. So sitting there, I suppose, as owners and from a financial perspective, where I guess people are now remodeling their business for as far as they could reasonably do it. What sort of things have you been doing? And I know I don't want to go into too much detail with the sleeping dogs, but my guess is that some of that is going to have an impact in terms of where you put them in terms of the finances. What are some of the, I suppose, ideas that you have in terms of how to put together that that sort of reprojection or reforecast the business?
Yeah, so I think that we are giving our members plenty of time to tell us that they don't want to be billed anymore or to freeze their memberships for an indefinite period of time. One of the things we're doing as a side note is we're typically, most organizations will have some freeze rules where you, in a 12-month period, can only put your membership contract on freeze for X number of months. We're throwing all that out the window. And so we are letting people put their free memberships on freeze indefinitely. At this time, what we've decided is that we're not going to bill anybody in the month of April. And then that scheme that I talked about earlier with the 50% of dues will actually start in May. So the month of April, no one's going to get billed. They have the opportunity to contact us, to tell us what they want to do, and then we will implement that on May 1st. We'll hit the ground running with the 50% scheme. I think that if indications that this is 60 days, maybe 90 days, if that's where we end, look, the reality is if this goes beyond 90 days, I think we're in a whole nother area of a whole nother realm of possibility. And they're not very good choices at that point. But if this is 60 to 90 days, I think that we will know by May 1st what we can count on as our fundamental base once we open. Because I think those people are going to stick with us, and we're going to make sure we take care of those members. As it relates to the sleeping dogs, look, we talked earlier that it's so easy, especially we're a non-contract club. It's everything is month to month, and many organizations are that way today. It has become so easy to stop your membership, to stop a recurring charge without even contacting us, no matter how difficult we try in this industry to make it for our customers. You have to come to the gym, you have to fill out the paperwork, you have to give us notice. The reality is one click on your iPhone and the membership stops for all intents and purposes. And because of the sins of the past in this industry, and there have been many, it's pretty difficult to win chargebacks. And so, my position has always been the more you communicate to the members, the better. The try and eliminate the problem of the sleeping dogs has been our mantra, and I think we've done a pretty good job. When we send out an email to 10,000 members, or when many of our large customers do, who also tend to be, as you're a member of one of them, over communicative. We don't typically get many requests for cancels, and I think if they were true sleeping dogs, they would just simply reply and say, "Hey, I want to cancel my membership." That doesn't happen very often with us.
Okay. In terms of support that's available to club owners, and I know like this podcast goes on around the world, and I know you're predominantly North America, but is there anything that you've seen or that's been available in terms of tax benefits or funding or anything like that you think is probably worth sharing to people who may be listening?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I've tried to do, I've had a lot of inbound questions from people through my LinkedIn profile. I'm trying to answer as many questions as possible. In the U.S., the Small Business Administration has begun a process to apply for small business loans as part of the Families First Act that's being pushed through Congress. There are requirements and limitations. I posted about that on my LinkedIn. People can send me a message and I can direct them to the links. The links are also available, that's a really good resource. There is paperwork that needs to be completed. You do need to show that you have no other means by which to make ends meet, and then they will consider you. So there are requirements. That's one. The folks over at Club Industry Magazine have done a pretty good job in creating a resource page on their website that has links to other resources that are available. I think patience is going to have to be key here. A lot of people are going through the process of applying for these types of short-term loans. These are all loans, by the way. And they're going to require collateralization. They're going to require personal guarantees, those types of things by the owners. But nonetheless, they are things that hopefully will get us through this.
And I guess, in all these, we spoke about it earlier about making the decisions quite quickly, but I suppose the sooner that you can get everybody to make them, if you are getting funding or trying to support your staff, and I suppose the quicker you can do it before everybody else starts doing it, probably the better it's going to be, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a long line of people, and each day that passes, that line is getting longer.
Yeah. So look, it's not been great news. It's been useful to go through this, but is there any, I like to be optimistic and provide some hope. Is there any, any light at the end of a tunnel? If you had to think of something, what sort of positive message could we give throughout this, based on on your experience?
Look, I look at the message that one of my members sent to our general manager at the at my Dale City location in Virginia, which still is open. And he wrote it to Ken, and he said, "Ken, I miss you. Thank you for leaving the doors open for me. Thank you for creating a sense of normalcy in my life, someplace that I can get away to and feel like myself again." And I think a lot of people are looking for that. And a lot of people are going to be looking for this industry to deliver them that sense of normalcy very, very soon. We've been through worst. At this point, I think we focus on the fact that we've got healthy families and continue to, look at the next 60 days and do everything we can to get past it, because I think that is what's waiting for us at the other end of the tunnel.
Fantastic. Well, look, Al, I appreciate your time today on a Sunday, and also I've seen the work that you've done, outside of your business to support a lot of other people, and people like yourself at these times. And the information you've got is extremely valuable. So thank you for what you're doing, and best wishes in getting through this. Thanks for your time today.
Right back at you, man. Thank you.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, then please go over to iTunes and subscribe to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Leave a review, leave a comment. It really would help us a lot to continue to keep these going.